All right, all. Organizational behavior, chapter 5. With Dr. Avey. That's Dr.Avey with a space in between.
Yeah. Although they might go right into
This chapter is another one of our individual mechanisms. So we've already covered job satisfaction and the mechanisms in which we try to influence job satisfaction, like job design and how we manage, but we'll talk about that at a later date. For this chapter, we're talking about stress.
Yeah.
How important, well, first, let's start with that. How important is stress
Yeah.
in performance?
Yeah, I think it sounds like a simple question, but it really depends on who is asking. Meaning, how important is stress in terms of kind of humanity, morally, ethically, stuff like that? It's important. I mean,
sure.
it hurts people, and we want to, as part of managers, we want to care for people. How important is stress in terms of performance? It's important. Like job satisfaction is important. It's not a huge predictor, but if someone's dissatisfied, they're a pain in the neck as an employee. If someone if they're dissatisfied to that point, if someone is stressed to the point of breaking, you're going to lose them as an employee.
Can stress increase performance?
Yes. Yeah, it can. I mean, that's a crazy one. And it can also make people steal and lie. It's pretty funny. So let's get into it.
Okay.
There is stress and there is eustress.
Okay.
So not gonna talk about eustress a whole lot, other than right before a football game or a track race or something that you're about to do, when you kind of get pumped up and you get that nervous, that biological reaction, and almost a little panicky, anxious.
Yes.
That biological reaction is the same reaction of stress. It is stress, but it's designed to crank out those endorphins, and so you can do whatever it is you're going to do, usually aerobic exercise, in a better way. Stress works the same way, but when you have chronic stress, your body's not designed to be like that all the time. So when you have chronic stress, whether it's coming from work or outside of work, it's eventually going to break you down.
Right. So
mentally and physically.
So define stress real quick.
Yeah. That's a great question.
I can't tell you how much satisfaction I get when I stump him just a little bit. Let's see if he can pick himself up from this one.
I don't know if I can. Rich Lazarus was the guy that did most of the work on it back in the 80s.
And totally redeem yourself.
But when you define it medically, you're talking about kind of some of the biometrics, right? Whether you increase heart rate and anxiety. You're defining eustress, its ability to focus, stuff like that. So it depends on which one. But generally, we look at stress as something that takes away from your capabilities, right, to perform on the job. It's almost like you have it's a resource-based model. You have resources you can put into your job. Stress over time takes away those resources, so you can just put less in.
James did a great job at really matching what the book's definition is. He stumbled a little bit, but he dusted himself off, responded really, really well, and gave a very accurate definition as well as good context. And so we'll just go through the book definition really quick so that you can cement it in your mind, because it's going to lead into a few other phrases that you're going to hear throughout the rest of this conversation. First, let's go to that definition of stress, that psychological response. So it's something that's happening inside based off of what we really perceive, and we'll talk about that in a second. 2, demands that are put on us, to things that are external that then occur to us, and we perceive those demands as having some sort of consequence, or that there's something at stake. And when we try to cope with those demands, it tends to tax us, or tax our resources, or drain us, or deplete our reserves. And we're going to learn a few more definitions, and these are going to substitute for some words that are within the definition of stress. When we talk about those demands that are put on us, we're going to use the word stressors. Those are the impetus, the demands that come and are put on our shoulders that then we have some perception about. And then the word that we use for like taxing of our resources or the draining of our resources, we're going to use the word strain. Strain is going to be the term that we use for our response when we're trying to cope with those things, what occurs, it sucks us dry.
There's a lot of pressure on managers, and I get it, to reduce stress for employees. There are good reasons for that. There are good humanistic reasons for that, right? Caring for the person. There's also good business reasons for that, right? If someone is for the most part, you call like that static level of whatever their normal healthy stress level is, and if they peak once in a while, that's okay. Human body, like mind, we're made. This idea. There's a book called "The Coddling of the American Mind," and it's fascinating. He writes about it. He's like, if people don't ever get stressed, they never get tested, they're really weak and they're more vulnerable. You've actually hurt them.
Yeah.
So going along and getting peaked in stress and it's fine.
It trains you to have new norms.
Right.
Yeah.
George Banana writes on resilience, and he talks about going up, like where you peak, and then he calls it homeostasis. This is like normal and healthy for me. And let's just do some simple type A, type B personality, right? Some people, they're normal and their good functioning is a higher stress level, and that's okay. It's just wired different. But when someone operates outside that latitude of norms for a long period of time, it's bad for business.
So it's not our job to remove all stressors out of an organization. Stress is necessary for people to grow in resilience and even grow in perception. Maybe when somebody goes through something, and they initially see that, oh my gosh, there's a lot at stake here. And when they go through it, they can gain some perception. They gain some, get on the high ground and actually look down and see, well, it's not that big of a deal. And learn how to deal with those situations as they move forward. Those are all good things to go through and will naturally occur in the workplace. I think what James is going to hit the nail on the head with as we move forward is, well, can we remove some of the more unnecessary stressors? Things that will cause too much strain and drain on our employees, or that when they occur with other things in the organization, almost amplify each other and push people to a point to where they do not have enough resources to deal with the problems at hand.
Well, it's all in a context.
I don't want to say just prevent.
Yeah.
I want to say manage.
Yeah. So this is, I think about this a couple different lenses. One of them is there's you managing you, right? As I'm talking to future managers here. So managing your own stress, but also creating conditions in which that enables other people to manage their own stress.
Yeah, for sure.
To say eliminate stress that's not going to work.
And we don't want to.
No, you don't want to. And the other thing is, as a manager, being a student of your team, identifying those stressors and recognizing when you need to pull some levers and pulleys and change some things. Stress can come from the job, and it can come from outside the job. Much of it, especially we talk about some COVID stuff the last few years, whether you have crazy elections or crazy things happening in news or whatever it is, everybody they don't just like check that at the door, right? They bring it in, and some people are highly invested, so it stresses them out even more. So I think of that like in those two lenses, and then think about inside the job, outside the job. And a big one for managers comes straight out of the resilience therapeutic literature. What can you control and what can't you control?
For sure.
So when you try to tackle, you have an employee that's going through a nasty divorce and you can see they're stressed. You can control their hours. You can control some of their job assignment.
Flexible work.
You cannot control the lawyers in the court system and their divorce.
No.
It's not for you to take on. Help where you can help, but you have to have some clear boundaries of what you can and can't control.
I would say help where you can help realistically.
Yeah.
Not even that's realistic to continue to perform as an organization.
Right.
Like, you can't totally give and try to be the white knight that saves their day.
Right.
You're trying to get an outcome that meets the employee's needs as best as you can, and the organization's needs still as best as you can.
And it's resistant, whether they call it one of like the Florence Nightingale syndrome or the white knight syndrome or whatever it is. It's how like I'm going to be the savior.
Worst HR people in the world.
Oh my word! Like when people tell me they want to be HR majors, I'm gonna go into HR. I go, why? And they say because I like people. I'm like, nope. If you're good with people, then this is going to be a win. But you can't just love people, because that kind of stress is usually a derivative of a human.
Yeah, for sure. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't like people.
Right.
You can still like people.
Yeah, you can still like people.
You got to be good at it.
You got to manage people. Yeah, for sure. So that's kind of what I think about stress. Internal, external, and my job is to get as many of the stressors out of there as possible. Recognize there's going to be massive individual differences. Let me just like throw this out. Two future managers. This is what I would do with someone, if I'm consulting. And I'm going to go off topic here for just a minute. That has to do with like personal identity. So I really enjoy my kids. I have 4 kids. I spend a lot of time with my kids, pour my life into my kids, and I really enjoy my job. And I think I'm decent at both. If someone tells me you're not a good teacher, I'd be like, okay. If someone tells me you're not a good father, that's going to hurt me real bad.
Right, for sure.
So stressors are almost always tied to personal identities, the things that are most important to them. So that's when I say you can't just have a wide swath solution to de-stress the organization.
Right. So
we're going to have Taco Tuesdays. Now everybody will be happy. Mm-hmm. That might work for 2 people. But it may not. It's a very individual thing. So back to the manage them up, manage them out, and those performance management conversations, this is a topic on the agenda.
Right.
What are the biggest sources of pain in your life? And as a manager go, is there something within my wheelhouse and my time and my resources that I can help you out with that? If there is, great.
That's also worthwhile.
Yeah.
Because you still want some stressors, again, to...
Right. Yeah, you don't want to create just comfort and convenience.
You don't want
to coddle. Yeah.
Yeah. So what are some major categories of stress outside of the eustress and stress? But let's talk about just normal stress at work. What are some of the major categories outside of just inside work and outside work?
Yeah. So we look at work. If I'm a manager, I'm looking around the organization. I'm looking at the work itself. Mm-hmm. And there's a strategy model, Porter's 5 Forces model. It's designed for a bigger not for an individual, but it's helpful. So take a look at that person's individual job. What are the inputs into that job?
Yep.
Examine that for stressors. What are the processes within the job, and then what are the outcomes of the job? So sometimes we talked about this with job redesign. Sometimes there's simple solutions. When someone has to depend on a supplier who consistently fails, and that stresses them out, see if you can get another competitive supplier, right? Increase your supplier options. Some of it is like at the job level. The other one, frankly, is the manager looking in the mirror and creating enough trust with the person to say, what am I doing that is a hindrance to you? Like either it's stress or whatever. Like how can I best support you? Sometimes those are helpful conversations. Sometimes they're not. Like I had a guy that was absolutely awesome engineer, and I kept publicly praising him, and it was one of his greatest fears of every meeting. He hated it.
Yeah.
And I love it, right?
Right.
But if you were to pull me aside and to tell me I did a good job, like I'd smile in my heart, and I'd go back, and that would be good. If you want to give me a raise, but please, for the love, stop punishing me in meetings by telling me I did a good job.
For me, if you publicly praise me, I usually think you have an ulterior motive. Like, are you really saying you did a good job?
What
are you just trying to make me feel better?
Right.
Like, what are you trying? Yeah.
So that's back to the individual.
Yeah.
But it takes trust in supervisor, subordinate, dyad for someone to say something like that. So anyway, the work itself, the supervisor relationship, and then colleagues. And you'll be able to tell, be 3 categories in my head, and you'll be able to tell the colleagues where they're building stress pretty quick by listening to what they disagree on. There is stress and conflict over ideas, and there's stress and conflict over people. And you just got to listen. Those are and conflict over ideas is a really good thing. And if that stresses people out, we have to just get them to buck up and get some resilience.
Right.
But when you hear it's over, this is a good or bad person, a smart or dumb person.
Right.
You gotta, as manager, you gotta redirect.
Right. So, and it's hard for me to separate sometimes the things that impact satisfaction and things that also impact stress. But let's use one example real quick. Why poor managers don't manage performance.
Right.
Or they're jerks in how they manage performance.
Right.
One of the two. Great example of a lot of poor managers who maybe really like people, again, going into the people liking business, but not the people managing business, is I got somebody who's not performing. I'm not going to manage their performance. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of their work and I'm going to move it to a high performer.
Yeah.
And that high performer, because they have organizational commitment, because they want to also serve other people, all that stuff, they're all in. They can't wait until a certain point.
Yep.
And that certain point is you have now created a work environment that is one, so unjust.
Yep.
And has put so much on my plate that I can't
And you've abused people.
physically handle it.
Yeah.
That I'm so stressed out, I got to go find something else. And you
Yep.
lose good performers by
Yep.
creating stressful environments.
Not only
because
did you
you're not
lose a good performer, you kept the bad
you kept
performer.
the bad one.
Yeah.
You did. It's double negative.
Yeah, let's go with that.
But that would be a positive in math.
Yeah.
So, but you're adding two negatives
Let's go with that.
versus multiplying.
Yeah.
Got it.
I like that. So it's twice as bad.
There's
Is
no
that what
cookie.
just happened?
I think so.
Are we math people? We should stick with business. So
Yeah,
right now.
for sure.
The
You
other
say
thing,
you don't need to know business. You don't need to know math to be in business.
Yeah, that's not true.
That's not true.
That's not true. I guess maybe the final thing I'd add on that, and we talked about it a bit earlier, but you'll see it in the textbook, is the idea of role clarity versus role ambiguity.
Yeah.
One of the primary sources of stressors, especially employees in their first 3 years, is not knowing what's expected of them. So it can be an advantage, I think, for older managers generationally and younger subordinates coming in, because the stereotype of the younger subordinates is, I want constant feedback. And what I say to managers is, that's your opportunity for constant clarification. Shape, these are the expectations, and I use a thing called binary communication. This is where this is the outcome or the deliverable for this task. Tell me what I just told you. And like, yeah, you said you want it done by Friday. No, that's not what I said. I actually told you I have a meeting on Friday to present the results, and you're going to be presenting at 10 a.m. Tell me what I just told you about the deadline. So you just, that's one way to clarify, and then the person, they know what's expected of them.
You're not giving them all the answers. You're letting them discover the answers through the Socratic method.
Few things are, I think, more frustrating, especially for new employees. And they're like, I have a rough idea of what the job is, but I'm not really sure.
Yeah. And you're giving them the opportunity to build the logic.
Yep.
Yeah. To get role clarity and actually get it versus just hand feeding it to them.
Right. To establish their own. Yeah. So I think big idea on stress. It's going to be a part of the work environment. It's not a whole lot. I mean, you can't eliminate it, but major stressors, try to get them out of the way. For managers, we do a thing called boundary spanning. It's like protecting your team. Almost leave it like a sheepdog going around the sheep, right? Like, well, I want to keep the problems out as much as possible, right? When you can't, then you help them, coach them, whatever it is, get them what they need. Because, if there's sustained levels of high stress, you're going to lose them. They'll either quit or they'll burn out.
Right. Cool.
Awesome.
All right.